Welcome to NTD News. I'm Stephanie Cox. Here are today's top stories. A Texas official says that one church's security plan and training saved lives when a shooter opened fire during a service on Sunday. The Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, talks about his plans, or lack thereof, to run for the U.S. Senate. He's getting pressure to run from key Republicans, except the one whose opinion counts the most. A new law set to take effect in California next year will allow you to tell retailers to stop selling your personal data. As e-commerce continues to take over the business world, robot numbers are rising. To meet consumer demands with 1 to 2 day shipping, people are working alongside robots. And in New York City, final preparations are being made for the Times Square New Year's Eve celebration. Tomorrow night, the square will see one of the biggest parties around the world. In the aftermath of Sunday's church shooting in Texas, the state's attorney general is saying that the church's security plan saved lives.
Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton told reporters Monday that in the wake of the deadly shooting, potentially over 200 lives were saved by the churchgoers' fast actions and training.
Despite the fact that we had 2 horrible losses of life, this church responded in seconds and reacted and saved the lives of potentially the rest of the people in that church.
On Sunday, a live stream video caught a man as he stood next to the pews inside the West Freeway Church of Christ. Wearing a dark hood, he started firing a long gun, killing 2 before the church's armed volunteer security team fatally shot him. The shooter has now been identified as 43-year-old Keith Thomas Kinnunen. Paxton added that while he doesn't think every tragedy can be prevented, he hopes that more churches will prepare in the same way.
Not just in Texas, but really across the nation, because this is, in my opinion, this is the model for the future.
Paxton says the FBI and state police are still trying to determine the shooter's motivation.
And also in New York today, Reverend Al Sharpton spoke out against anti-Semitism after a stabbing attack at a New York Hanukkah celebration that appeared to be a hate crime. NTD's Miguel Moreno has more on how people are handling the tragedy on the last day of Hanukkah.
It wasn't the kind of announcement you'd expect to hear on the last day of Hanukkah.
That hate anywhere is hate everywhere. When you attack anyone, you're attacking me too.
This weekend's attack on 5 Jewish men in Monsey, New York, brought together blacks and Jews who together decried hate.
If it had been attacks against the members of the black community, we would have stood up and spoke out.
The Monsey stabbing is the latest in a string of attacks or incidences in which Jews were the target over the holidays. The Anti-Defamation League has counted 13 since December 3rd. On Sunday, the NYPD released video of the suspect's arrest in New York City. 37-year-old Grafton Thomas is accused of breaking into a rabbi's home in Monsey, New York, and stabbing 5 people with a machete as they celebrated Hanukkah. 5 were injured, 1 critically. Rabbi Mark Schneier said it's a dark time, but that there's hope.
And to be standing here with African American leaders speaking out against anti-Semitism, this is the light in a period of darkness we're going through in New York right now.
Thomas pled not guilty to 5 counts of attempted murder and 1 count of burglary. In a statement, his family said he had a long history of mental illness and hospitalization. They added that he has no known history of anti-Semitism. In Thomas's journal, however, police found drawings of swastikas on the same page as a Star of David. On his phone, there were repeated searches of "Why did Hitler hate the Jews?" New York's governor and New York City's mayor have said they'll increase the police presence in Jewish neighborhoods, such as in Brooklyn, which has a large Orthodox Jewish population. So Mayor Bill de Blasio yesterday outlined a multifaceted plan aimed at preventing hate crimes, which includes adding curriculum to Brooklyn schools about stopping hate. Miguel Moreno, NTD News, New York.
For months now, there has been speculation that U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo might run for a Senate seat in his home state of Kansas. Today, he diffused rumors that he's seriously considering that run.
President Trump has said.
U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has been coy about his plans to run for the U.S. Senate. But today he told Fox and Friends that he has no plans to run.
It's my intention to stay and continue to serve as President Trump's Secretary of State. I've said that consistently. I intend to keep saying it, and as long as President Trump wants me to serve in this capacity, there's still work to do.
So he's a President Trump has said he might want Pompeo to serve in the Senate, or at least that he would talk to him about it.
If I thought we were going to lose that seat, because we shouldn't lose that seat, it's a great state. It's a state that I won overwhelmingly, as you know. We shouldn't lose that state. Then I would sit down and talk to Mike.
The question was prompted by the retirement of Kansas Senator Pat Roberts. He announced in January he won't seek a fifth term. This has left open the possibility that Pompeo, who would be the best-known Republican in the race, might enter. Pompeo represented a district in Kansas in the House before being chosen by Trump to lead the CIA. Last March, he was asked to take over for Rex Tillerson as Secretary of State. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has said Pompeo is his first pick for the Kansas Senate seat.
Microsoft is suing North Korea-linked hackers for targeting users in the U.S. The tech giant says mysterious group called Thallium targets Microsoft users by impersonating the company. The complaint says Thallium has been tricking users into offering up passwords and other sensitive information. Thallium targets government employees, think tanks, university staff, and members of groups that work on issues like nuclear proliferation and human rights. The lawsuit accuses Thallium of sending emails about account security issues designed to look like they come from reputable services like Gmail, Yahoo, and Microsoft's Hotmail. Microsoft is now asking for control of website domains associated with Thallium and compensation for damages. A new consumer protection law is taking effect in California next year that will give shoppers more control over their personal data.
Do not sell my data. Expect to see more of this phrase when shopping online in 2020. The California Consumer Privacy Act is due to take effect, giving Golden State shoppers more control over their personal data and also affecting online shoppers nationwide. Under the new law, consumers will be able to find out what personal data a company is collecting about them and choose to opt out of the sale of such information. Large retailers like Home Depot are putting up signs in its California stores. Many companies will also allow shoppers around the country to access that information online. For example, Target is adding a Do Not Sell button to its website, visible to online shoppers nationwide. The law also affects social media platforms like Facebook and Google, and streaming services like Netflix. There's no equivalent federal law yet, but the Californian law is expected to set the standard nationally for some time to come. The European Union implemented a similar law in 2018.
You may not think robots are part of your everyday life, but if you ordered a present for Christmas, it may have been sorted and packed by a robot.
Amanda Talon is no stranger to working alongside robots. Her job is to enter a cage and tame a fleet of wheeled robots long enough to pick up a fallen toy or relieve a traffic jam.
Basically, my vest communicates with our drive robots here to either slow down or stop, so I can go out here and either pick up items that have fallen or reboot drives that have bombed out.
Without these fast-moving pods, retailers say they wouldn't be able to fulfill consumer demand. Amazon now has more than 200,000 robots working around the U.S. That's double the number it had last year. But despite the growing number of robots running around, the head of Amazon's robotics says safety remains a top priority.
If there's ever an incident, we take every incident extremely seriously, and we'll look into the root cause of that incident and then work hard to make sure that that won't happen again.
The head of Amazon's robotics says this is transforming warehouse work in a way that can extend human capability by shifting people to what they are best at: problem solving, common sense, and thinking on their feet.
I think a lot of people have assumed that robots will replace human workers, but obviously, as you can see, that's not the case. You know, we work side by side. They help us, and we help them, I guess, because I go in and I fix them.
Much of this boom in warehouse robotics has its roots in Amazon's $775 million purchase of Massachusetts startup Kiva Systems in 2012. Amazon rebranded it and transformed it into an in-house lab that has been designing and building its robot armada for 7 years.
With just one day before the new year, the finishing touches are being put on New York City's New Year's Eve celebration. On top of the skyscraper at One Times Square, the famous ball now sits in wait for its debut tomorrow.
3, 2, 1, Happy New Year!
The iconic Times Square ball was illuminated and sent up atop One Times Square, one day ahead of the New Year's Eve celebration. The ball, composed more than 2,500 Waterford crystal triangles, can display a palette of more than 16 million colors and billions of patterns. This year's design celebrates the gift of goodwill. Its pattern is made from pineapples, meant as a symbol of hospitality.
Goodwill is all about benevolence, it's all about generosity, it's all about good fortune, it's all about reaching out to your fellow man.
This year's special guests for the New Year's ball drop are high school teachers and students who advocate clean water and air, locally and abroad.
And our special guests are going to join the Mayor of New York City to push this crystal button to lead the 60-second countdown to midnight and start the descent of the ball.
More than 1 million people are estimated to join the celebration at Times Square on Tuesday night. Penny Zhou, NTD News, New York.
And it's not a ball, but a bell. One of the most famous landmarks in England, the bell on London's Big Ben, is set to ring in the new year. It rang 12 times today ahead of the festivities. Big Ben chimes on the hour. It also has bells that chime every 15 minutes. The iconic bell has been silent since 2017 while it went through restoration, but it will make a brief appearance for New Year's, marking the start of 2020. Construction began on the clock tower in 1843 and was finished in 1859. And up next, a Chinese court sentenced the doctor who altered the genes of twin girls. More on that after the break.
Every once in a while, something comes along so masterful, it leaves you in awe. So inspiring, it changes your life. So beautiful, you wish it would never end. When that happens, it's something not to be missed. Shen Yun, an all-new production every year.
Viewers have described China Uncensored like The Daily Show, but about China.
At the beginning, I was super excited when I got 500 views, and now the show's grown to about 500,000 subscribers on YouTube. One episode reached 7.9 million people. I'm a little freaked out that that many people have seen my face. In 5 years, I see China Uncensored as the sole source of edutainment worldwide.
Are you tired of newspapers spinning the truth and pushing false narratives? And are you looking for honest coverage of Spygate, the true story of collusion? Or the truth behind the crisis at our southern border? Or how the Chinese Communist Party is working to subvert America and our way of life? Then you need to check out the Epoch Times newspaper. It's independent, nonpartisan, and it doesn't push any political agendas. Just go to readepoch.com and try it yourself for a full month for just $1. You'll absolutely love it.
A Chinese court sentenced a scientist who created the world's first gene-edited babies to 3 years in prison today.
A scientist who created the world's first gene-edited babies was jailed for 3 years on Monday on the charge of illegally practicing medicine, according to China's official Xinhua news agency. He Jiankui triggered a backlash when he announced in November 2018 that he had used gene-editing technology to change the genes of twin girls.
These results?
That procedure was to protect them from getting the AIDS virus in the future. The court also handed lesser sentences to Zhang Renli and Qin Jinzhou for having conspired with her in his work. According to Xinhua, He and his collaborators forged ethical review materials and recruited men with AIDS who were part of a couple to carry out the gene editing.
I feel proud, actually. I feel proudest.
The court was quoted as saying the three, in seeking fame and wealth, deliberately violated national regulations in scientific research, adding that they had crossed the bottom line of medical and scientific research ethics.
Scientists around the world also condemned the experiment as illegal, unethical, unacceptable, and reckless. And more than 1,000 people rallied peacefully in Hong Kong yesterday, expressing their hopes and fears at a critical time in the region's history.
The crowd, a mix of young and elderly people, braved the rain at a rally on Sunday. A long black banner depicting the protest's timeline was laid on the ground for participants to pen their thoughts.
It's almost as if we're fighting a losing battle, because if you're against something like the Chinese government, even as something as just a police force, it's still quite hard. But we'll still be out here doing what we think is right, because if we don't come out, a lot of our rights would slowly but surely be deteriorated away.
Hong Kong people have already experienced half a year of protests. How should we decide what to do in the future? We hope this rally can provide a clear direction for people to know clearly their roles in the future. What started as demonstrations against a now withdrawn extradition bill evolved into a broader pro-democracy movement. In recent days, police are again clashing with protesters at several shopping malls and busy tourist areas. On Saturday, riot police arrested around a dozen people and used pepper spray to break up a gathering. More protests are planned in the next few days, including a countdown to New Year's Day and a march on January 1st.
Be water. It's a martial arts philosophy popularized in the early 1970s and now used by pro-democracy protesters in Hong Kong this year.
Vastly different protests have borne common slogans and symbols. The late martial artist Bruce Lee's philosophy, Be Water, is being used in Hong Kong. Taking the concept even further, protesters created 4 principles. Be strong like ice when confronted by police or violent vigilante groups. Be fluid like water when escaping through the city's narrow streets. Gather like dew for flash mob protests that are hard to prepare for. And scatter like mist to avoid arrest and be able to fight for another day. The demonstrators say they learned lessons from the umbrella movement of 2014, when young people occupied parts of the city, calling for universal suffrage for the region. In contrast, the Hong Kong police force currently faces massive disapproval and opposition from the public. Riot police fire volleys of tear gas, beanbag rounds, rubber bullets, and pepper spray to quell the protests. More than 6,500 people were arrested so far. A 17-year-old student who was beaten by police in September said that he has been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder and had to abandon his upcoming exams. But police have described their actions as restrained, with an appropriate use of force. Many protesters are now demanding an independent inquiry into police brutality. Recent figures show the police force earned a total of $17 million in allowances during the past 6 months.
Up next, France prepares for New Year's celebrations under the threat of terrorism. 100,000 policemen will patrol celebrations countrywide. More on that after the break.
When you look at TV networks in America, a soundbite and fight-it-out culture prevails on news and commentary programs. As a Canadian, I'm fascinated with America, and I wanted to offer American thought leaders an opportunity to share their thoughts in a deep dive format, where we can explore their ideas together. And so American Thought Leaders was born. The world's most brilliant thinkers believed that open discourse was the key to greatness. However, all around the world, we see that discourse is being stifled and political agendas have subverted media. The Epoch Times launched its Global Thought Leaders program to bring back this great tradition of free thought. As the host of American Thought Leaders, every week I interview some of the most intriguing minds on the most pressing issues of our time. Be sure to check out our new episodes every week.
Our investigative reporters at the Epoch Times have spent 18 months uncovering the biggest political scandal in modern history. We connected the dots around Spygate, the actions by Obama-era officials against Trump's 2016 presidential campaign. Join me on Declassified as we bring you up-to-date developments on this unfolding scandal.
The Christmas and New Year's holidays are a peak tourist season in France, but it's also a time when the public is at greater risk from terrorist attacks. French authorities today announced higher security measures.
The Christmas and New Year holidays are part of a peak tourist season in France, but it's also a period when public security is at greater risk from attack by terrorists. On Monday, French authorities announced special security measures. France's Interior Minister said the nation will deploy 100,000 policemen to patrol New Year's Eve celebrations around the country. The risk of terrorist strikes typically increases across Europe at this time of year. Last month, a terrorist killed 2 people on London Bridge, and another terrorist attack in France resulted in 5 deaths at a Christmas market. In France these days, we unfortunately live at high risk when it comes to terrorism. Each day, we fight terrorism, which does not constitute a specific risk but a permanent one. We are always mobilized against this threat. On New Year's Eve, police will be reinforced by soldiers and firefighters. Tourism picked up after a slump in 2016 that was caused in part by ISIS terrorist attacks. Travelers visiting the Eiffel Tower this year brushed off security concerns.
Anymore today, there's risks anywhere. If you read the news in the U.S., we have it with other type of terrorist activities, with school shootings and things.
Van Aken says he won't let it stop him from enjoying the New Year celebration.
So it's just about, you can't let that stuff stop you from getting out and exploring the world.
Police officers and soldiers patrolling the area around the Eiffel Tower say threats from militant terrorists remain elevated in France.
The holidays are a special time for pastry chefs in France. In Paris, luxury brand Fauchon House is busy creating a gourmet pastry collection just for the holidays. Our France correspondent went to Fauchon's kitchen to see the magic behind the sweet treats.
There are 2 things Francois Dabanet never stops doing: creating and traveling. He's the brain behind all pastry recipes of Fauchon's luxury brand, and an ambassador of French excellence across the world. This is Fauchon's headquarters, founded 133 years ago at Place de la Madeleine.
We create all our fresh pastries here. The team is currently working on winter holiday products. It smells of gingerbread everywhere. Here, we prepare citrus confit. Here, Jordan prepares gingerbread, and Alexander prepares chocolate decorations.
The chef doesn't call this place a kitchen, but a laboratory. But there's no chemical experiments being done here, only fresh ingredients.
Here, this is where we work on all kinds of dough. Here are the eclairs, and there are some caramelized nuts. It just came out of the oven.
The life of a pastry chef is rhythmic. They are often creating pastry collections to coincide with the various holidays, like Valentine's Day, Christmas, and Easter. Dabanet is the head of the team, and he calls Thibault his hands.
Thibault and I have 2 ways of creating something. One is we start from an art-inspired design. In that case, we draw the pastry and then decide what to put inside. Or we start from a raw product we wish to work on and bring new perspectives in its taste. It can be any fruit, vegetable, or nut, anything.
Every detail counts, like in this incandescent Christmas cake, which is topped by a sugar-blown ball.
The Christmas holiday is a happy moment to share with the family. To celebrate that, we wanted to have fun with a small firework on top of our cake.
At only 31, Dabanet has worked with the top pastry chefs and already has a long career behind him. Most of his inspiration comes from painting and sculpting. He said he's particularly inspired by street art in New York. Fauchon's house owns 81 gourmet shops across the world, all of which have pastry chefs trained by Dabanet to reproduce his recipes.
The creation of all pastries is in Paris. After the recipe is created, they are distributed around the world. So we need to share with chefs in Asia, the Middle East, etc. The chefs come here 2 to 3 times a year. We show them the new collections and we talk about local products because 70% of their production is Parisian pastry and 30% are their own local pastries.
Dabané says one secret to success in the pastry world is to never stop learning from others.
Up next, the editor-in-chief of Guinness World Records takes a look back at all the record-breaking feats for 2019. See some of the most memorable when we return. The theme for this year's Guinness World Records was the spirit of adventure. We take a look at some of the highlights from 2019.
People from all over the world broke world records in 2019, from hiking to the South Pole to swimming an unimaginable distance, taking a record-breaking road trip, and making extremely unlikely basketball shots.
Proof that Guinness World Records Day just goes from strength to strength.
In Dubai, a former British Royal Marine, Nick Watson, swam 3.1 miles in 2 hours, 42 minutes and 48 seconds, and he wasn't alone. He pulled his son Rio in a kayak. Rio has a rare chromosome disorder that, joined with other disabilities, makes him unable to walk or talk. But this dedicated dad has made it possible for Rio to feel the experience of being in a triathlon. They have participated in many triathlon courses over the years. 27-year-old from France, Matthew Torder, is the youngest person to reach the South Pole alone. He hiked for 40 days before reaching the bottom of the world. Another man, Song Jiang, tackled an unimaginable distance, riding across China on an electric scooter over 6,000 miles. That's like traveling across the state of Texas 8 times.
It's great to see so many people channeling their inner adventurer.
Less adventurous, but just as impressive. 3 Harlem Globetrotters broke records together, making unbelievable shots. Dante Hammer Harrison performed the longest underhand basketball shot at 85.3 feet. Chris Handles Franklin made a shot from 63.3 feet away on his knees backwards. And Rochelle Wham Middleton bounced a basketball in a figure-8 style 63 times in 1 minute blindfolded.
Congratulations, you are officially amazing.
And that's all for today's news. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Stephanie Cox.